Just one bluefin tuna can sell for millions at the Toyosu Market auction in Japan. Because of this price, there's a bustling enterprise of fake bluefin tuna.
And one of the reasons for that is that it's so easy to get away with the crime.
Scallops, lobster, and red snapper are also commonly faked. One analysis found that nearly 40% of fish samples tested were mislabeled.
Seafood fraud is perhaps one of the most fraudulent items that consumers are coming into contact with regularly.
It could be a restaurant passing off a $3 piece of tilapia as $17 red snapper. But there are also entire criminal rings smuggling fish across the world.
1 out of 5 fish caught is caught illegally.
And with them, billions of pounds of other animals that weren't the targets. But stopping these bad actors is incredibly difficult. So how did counterfeit seafood become so widespread? And why is it so hard to catch the criminals? We'll start with a popular ingredient in sushi restaurants, imitation crab. It's often made of surimi, a seafood paste filled with ground-up whitefish, like threadfin bream or Alaska pollock. That's the same kind in McDonald's Filet-O-Fish or in fish sticks.
있는 냉동 블럭 형태로 저희한테 입고되게 됩니다.
In this factory in Dongjin, South Korea, a machine shreds the surimi blocks into the texture of dough. Workers dump in salt, starch, sugar, and crab flavoring, often made from crab stock. Then this machine rolls the mixture into a log. Food coloring made from tomato and paprika gives it the distinct orangey red look.
이렇게 대게를 이제 쪘을 때 저희가 다리살을 빼고 나면은 그 위에 있는 색상과 가장 유사한 색상을 내는 게 목적이죠.
This is a totally legal product, as long as it's labeled imitation crab meat. But what's illegal is trying to pass off this imitation stuff as the real thing. Like the UK restaurant chain Frankie and Benny's did. It admitted that more than half of its crab bruschetta was imitation crab. Suppliers have been caught trying to label cheaper crabs from Asia as expensive ones, like these Maryland blues. Fishermen trap real Maryland blue crabs off the east coast of the US.
Population levels have been declining because of environmental water quality issues, especially in Chesapeake Bay.
Max Valentine is a seafood fraud expert with the conservation nonprofit Oceana.
And so they are being sold for astronomical prices. There's a very limited supply of them right now.
Once this meat is picked out of the shell, it becomes lump crab. Those lumps are baked into things like crab cakes.
So once it's been processed, it's really hard for you to tell what it is you're getting.
Federal law enforcement busted a Virginia seafood supplier for labeling 400,000 pounds of imported lump crab as product of USA. A 2015 Oceana study found that nearly 40% of Maryland blue crab cakes sold across Washington, D.C. and Maryland were mislabeled. They didn't contain that species of crab at all.
It would turn out to be swimming crab from Southeast Asia, and it's incredibly cheaper.
We gave Max some lump crab to understand how we can tell it's legit.
What's really great here is that the company has put a lot of information on the back of the package. So it's telling us that it's wild caught. It's giving us the genus and species name. We're able to tell that this is a blue swimming crab from Indonesia.
But if your package doesn't have all that info, buy your Maryland blue crabs whole and alive and get them in season from April to December. Bluefin is the most expensive kind of tuna because it's the largest, high in fat, and so rare. They're found across the North Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In Japan, bluefin are sold at live auction here at Toyosu Market, the largest fish market in the world. Bidders like Takayuki Shinoda have about 15 minutes to check the fresh tuna for any nicks or scratches before the action starts.
基本は、皆さんやってる通りのことがあって、まず尾っぽ、尻尾の部分が切れてるので、そこの断面、あと 腹ってお腹の部分がですね裂いてあるので、そこを見て腹の内側の部分をですね。
With a ring of the bell, the auction is off.
今日のマグロの競りの価格は、今日マグロ本体がですねそんなに大きくないんですよ。103キロっていうマグロだったんで、トータル金額にすると、軽自動車ぐらいの価格ですね。
And as demand for this expensive fish has increased, so has its value. In 2019, a tuna set a record at Toyosu when it sold for $3.1 million.
それをここ数年でですねどんどん取っていってしまったら、やっぱり数量は減ってしまうし、
Pacific bluefin stocks are overfished, and the yellowfin population is headed toward collapse.
やっぱあんだけの魚、魚体のものです。大きなものです。あそこに育つまでに何年もかかるわけです。ただ私がこれから10年後、20年後、30年後にその時にマグロがなくなってしまうんじゃないかな。
Overfishing and illegal activity are a major cause. In 2018, Spanish authorities uncovered a group that sold over $14 million worth of illegally fished tuna between Malta and Spain. Police arrested dozens.
The tuna fishery is especially difficult to manage because tuna are migratory in nature, and as a result, vessels targeting tuna are usually fishing across multiple jurisdictions.
But there's another type of fraud, fake tuna. That includes trying to sell escolar, a cheap fish that could have dangerous levels of mercury, as white tuna.
If you can be successful at that fraud, the returns are huge.
Oceana's 2013 study of fish DNA found that 59% of tuna samples at US restaurants and grocery stores were mislabeled. So how can you make sure you're not getting robbed? If you're going for bluefin, maybe save it for a special occasion, because the real stuff is usually sold at high-end restaurants.
If you're seeing bluefin tuna at your local supermarket, I'd say that's probably fraudulent.
Grocery stores do sell yellowfin, but make sure to check the price.
This is incredibly low. For about $8, we would expect a tuna steak of this size to be quite a bit more expensive. Certainly over $15, closer to $20.
And then peruse that label for any red flags. This package says yellowfin on the outside, but just tuna on the inside.
And so that makes me concerned that this isn't, in fact, yellowfin tuna. It says that this is processed and packaged in Indonesia. And then this label is telling us that it's a product of Venezuela. And so that is very concerning.
And the ingredients include carbon monoxide to get that bright red color. It's allowed as a meat colorant in the US, but banned in Canada and much of Europe because it can cover up spoilage.
I probably would not have purchased this for myself. It would raise too many red flags for me.
Wild scallops are a popular mollusk often found in bays or shallow waters. Peru exported $88 million worth of scallops in 2019, and over half of that comes from here in the Sechura Bay.
Rica en lo que es toda especie de variedades, lo que es pescado y especialmente la concha de abanico.
Fishermen dredge out the bivalves from deep in the seabed and use nets to haul them onto boats. Scallops die soon after they're taken from the water. They're transported to processing facilities like this one, where workers dump them into huge piles on deshelling lines. These shuckers remove the valuable meat at lightning speeds. Then they wash them to remove any residue from the shell or sea. The US is one of the world's biggest scallop importers. Here in New York City, Chef Preston Clark sells a plate of 3 scallops from Massachusetts for about $55.
Those are like some of the best things the ocean has to offer. And it's very limited, very expensive.
And that price makes it really attractive to counterfeiters. Criminals have been caught cutting skate or whitefish into coins to pass them off as scallops.
They oftentimes get injected with like a saltwater or saline solution to make them look plumper, to make them weigh more, to make them more expensive.
All that's illegal.
Give them the guillotine, if you ask me, because I think it's really that. I think it's that terrible. You know, you never want to serve anything fraudulent. That's it ruins your complete credibility as a chef.
Chef Clark says the most surefire way to know you're getting scallops is, well, to see a shell. But if you don't have that luxury...
Then also I'm looking for this muscle here. This muscle called the abductor muscle. That's one way to tell that the scallops are really legit, if you don't get them fresh in the clam.
He also suggests learning the seasons. Nantucket Bay scallops are fished from October to March.
If you were in, say Nebraska, in the middle of May, I would be skeptical.
Then there's salmon, one of the most popular fish in the world. If you're chowing down on pinkfish, you might actually be eating rainbow trout. Or your salmon could be labeled all wrong.
Sometimes you can see farm-raised salmon sold as wild-caught salmon.
In a study of 82 salmon samples from across the U.S., Oceana found almost half were mislabeled. Most of it was farm-raised salmon sold as wild-caught. Wild salmon can cost more than double the price of farmed ones. It's caught in the Northern Hemisphere, like here in Alaska. Kyle Lee is fishing Copper River King salmon, the biggest and most expensive wild salmon in the Pacific.
Retail price $1,500, $2,000 right here.
Fishing here legally means following a lot of rules, like buying a $25,000 permit and using a net designed specifically to catch salmon.
A lot larger mesh size, around 6 inches, so the smaller fish swim right through it.
Not only is there a higher risk of capsizing as Kyle fishes in these shallow waters, but there's a huge risk of coming back empty-handed.
King! Give me a second, I'll explain in a second. Should have pulled him over the bow. And because the king was so large, it overpowered me and it ended up swimming out.
But if they're able to catch one, it's big money. Copper River Kings can run for over $100 a pound.
Yeah, go! Oh, woo! We just caught this toad of a Copper River King salmon. This one probably weighs probably 30, 35 pounds. Very excited that we got the first one on board.
Meanwhile, farm-raised salmon grow up in large ocean pens.
Just like humans, fish can get sick. And when you've got a lot of fish in a pen banging into each other, you can get scrapes and cuts. I would say that most, if not all, farm-raised fish, they use antibiotics, which can often be transferred to the flesh that we're then eating.
This fillet we found in a New York City store was labeled raised in the wild.
Well, that's the trick, right? You would think that this is a wild-caught salmon, but really it's just raised and caught in an ocean pen.
So how can you tell the difference between the two?
Salmon fillets that are raised in a farm, they tend to be a little lighter pink in color rather than sort of that deep, vibrant red that you get with your wild-caught salmon. Your farm-raised salmon fillets are going to have more of that marbling, tend to be a bit meatier, bigger, thicker fillets because they're not having to work as hard surviving in the ocean versus surviving in pens. No marathons have been run by this fish, that's for sure.
Red snapper is one of the most prized fish in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a notorious victim of counterfeiting because it's so expensive. The fish is hard to breed in captivity, so in the US, what we eat is wild-caught. Fishermen catch it off the coast of states like Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama. In its 2013 report, Oceana tested 120 red snapper samples across the US, and all but 7 were mislabeled. It's white on the inside, so it's really easy to fake.
So this is snapper, this is black bass, this is striped bass, and this is bronzino. They definitely don't cost the same.
And unfortunately, unless you've worked with fish all your life, if you're looking at two white fillets, it can be really hard to make that distinction.
Often what you're getting is a cheaper farmed fish like tilapia. Tilapia can be a fourth of the price of red snapper, and it's not as healthy. It doesn't have the omega-3s or B12 levels that red snapper does. So if you love the sweet and nutty flavor profile of red snapper, how can you tell you're actually buying the real fish? We asked Chef Clark.
It's great looking fish. These come from Florida. The smell, it's like super fresh like the ocean. I'm gonna cut this big one first.
He says to buy the fish whole, and don't get intimidated by the head. Most seafood counters will slice it up for you. But if you can only buy it in fillet form, ask for skin on, so you can see that red color. Shape and feel can be giveaways too. Tilapia are a less angular fish, head to tail, while red snapper go from a wide body to a tiny tail.
So tilapia is a bit firmer. It's pretty solid if you give it a squeeze, versus your red snapper tends to be a little bit softer and more delicate.
Lobster's another tricky case. They're found across the globe, but some of the most expensive ones live off the coast of Maine.
For the most part around the world, the majority of lobster species don't have two claws like this, so we're fairly unique in that regard.
Here, fishers like Kurt Brown call themselves lobstermen.
We're hauling up the trap right here. Everybody has their own buoy colors, and that's how you know whose trap is whose. And we're in 28 feet of water right here, and let's see what we catch. There it is.
Kurt has to haul in the traps one by one.
So they smell the bait in the trap, and they crawl into the trap, and they get up in here, and it's difficult for them to get back out. Every trap is required to have these escape vents to protect the juvenile lobsters.
These crustaceans can take up to 7 years to mature. And for lobstermen to catch them, they have to meet the legal limits for size.
The minimum size is 3 1/4 inches carapace length. The maximum size is 5 inches carapace length. Bigger lobsters are the breeders.
A lobsterman like Kurt can empty up to 300 traps a day, or about 900 pounds of lobster. Live, fresh lobster can top $30 a pound. That can be more than 4 times the price of shrimp. Counterfeiters can see a wide margin of return if they can dupe buyers.
If you're getting lobster ravioli where it's been really chopped up and it's inside of those little shells, that can be hard to know whether that's lobster or not.
In lump form, counterfeiters might swap in cheaper crustaceans, like the meat of spiny Caribbean lobsters, which don't have claws and are less sweet, and can be half the price. In 2016, an Inside Edition investigation accused the restaurant chain Red Lobster of using langostino, which is closer to crawfish, in its lobster bisque. The chain has since changed its website to include that it sources and uses langostino. But there's an even more dubious swap: fish. That same 2016 investigation found that more than a third of U.S. lobster samples tested were actually cheaper whitefish like whiting or pollock. So how can we find the legit shellfish? Well, if you're buying them yourself, get them whole.
This is the best way to make sure that you're not dealing with any nonsense. Is to make sure that you just get them fresh and break them down yourself. You want to make sure they're alive also. Once the lobsters are dead, the process of rigor mortis starts, and it starts to decompose the meat. So you want the lobsters to be as alive as possible. You want to make sure that you get a whole piece of claw. I think the claw meat is a little bit softer, right? I think the tail meat is a little bit harder, is a little bit tougher.
And if you're at a restaurant, order dishes that contain lobster closest to its whole form, avoiding pastas and soup with shredded lobster.
Once it's in cooked form, chopped meat, you can't really tell. You have no idea.
Caviar is one of the most commonly faked foods on the planet.
It's just a small, little tasty ball, and it's incredibly expensive.
It's difficult to harvest. Caviar comes from the roe or eggs of sturgeon. The majority of wild sturgeon species are critically endangered, so almost all of the caviar we eat comes from fish raised in pens. This small caviar farm in Madagascar's highlands is Africa's first. The company Assapenser raises 6 species of sturgeon for its roe. In captivity, the fish can take 10 years to mature before their eggs are ready. Processors remove the egg sac from the dead fish. Then they rub it over a metal grate. Salting the eggs helps enhance the flavor, and aging them for at least 4 months in fridges lets them develop nutty notes. Assapenser sells it under the label Rova. A kilo of it can go for over $5,000. The cost is on par with many European brands, and that's really attractive to counterfeiters. One European study of 149 caviar samples found 10% weren't fish eggs. Some criminals make fake caviar from sturgeon farm waste, like organs, which they shape into spheres. Conservationists say that could be harmful to human health. Counterfeiters also might try to sell the eggs of cheaper fish. A company in the US was busted for passing off the roe of American paddlefish as caviar. The owner was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Total fines amounted to $160,000. And as caviar demand surges, the problem could get worse. So say you want to splurge. How do you make sure you're buying the real deal? Well, if you're at a restaurant, ask to see the tin. Every package should have a non-resealable label. And any commercial tin imported into the US should have a certificate label, something like this. It will tell you the species of caviar, that it was raised in captivity, the country of origin, and the harvest year. You could also use the hot water test. Real caviar will harden in hot water as the proteins cook. But if it's artificial caviar, it'll dissolve. So who exactly is committing these seafood crimes? It can be ships fishing without a license, operating where they're not allowed to, or using illegal fishing gear. They often sail through the remote waters of what's called the high seas. The region makes up nearly 2/3 of the oceans, and there's no one government responsible for protecting it. It's like the Wild West, so it's easier to get away with crime. The nonprofit Sea Shepherd patrols oceans to stop illegal fishing. It's used controversial tactics in the past against whaling boats in the Antarctic, like blocking ships and throwing rotten butter on decks. The organization says it doesn't use these techniques anymore. Instead, it partners with local governments to patrol protected waters alongside their coast guards, like these 8 African nations.
We provide the ship, we provide the crew, we provide the fuel, and our government partner provides the law enforcement agents who serve on board our ship to make arrests of illegal vessels.
Captain Peter Hammerstedt has spent decades chasing down illegal vessels. Sea Shepherd caught this ship off the coast of Liberia in 2019. It attempted to flee when authorities found it fishing in a prohibited area. It's one example of what's called IUU, illegal, unreported, or unregulated fishing.
It's believed that IUU fishing is responsible for 20% of the global catch of fish.
The crew had tried to hide the name of its ship with a fishing net.
We caught you today fishing on the Liberian water. You don't have a paper in compliance with our fishery law, so you are under arrest.
The oceans off West Africa see the highest rates of illegal catches in the world. It's estimated that 40% of global IUU fishing happens here. This shrimp trawler was caught off the coast of Gabon. The crew was using nets with weaving that was too small. Just 0.2% of the seafood weight on board was shrimp. The other 99.8% was bycatch, meaning not the targeted animal. Most of it was thrown back in the ocean, but hardly any of it survived the ordeal. By some estimates, 20 million protected or endangered animals are caught as bycatch every year. Animals like turtles and sharks, and they're thrown back dead or alive.
It's a baby scalloped hammerhead. What's their status? Pretty
After seeing the conditions on board, the government of Gabon suspended all shrimp trawling in its waters. Sea Shepherd also caught this Italian shrimp trawler off the coast of Gambia, fishing with an undersized net. Although the shrimp was labeled sustainably caught, 99.9% of the catch on board was other species, like these sharks and octopuses. Sometimes Sea Shepherd will simply pull out illegal fishing gear it finds, like these 21,000 meters of gill net in the Southern Ocean.
After hauling continuously for more than 100 hours, all this gear has now been recovered. This has ensured that the gear cannot illegally take any more life in these waters, as well as the gear being evidence to help prosecute the fishing vessel.
Other times, ships are seized by the country's Navy or Coast Guard. International police forces wanted this ship for years for illegally fishing Chilean sea bass off Antarctica. In 2016, Indonesian authorities caught it operating in their waters. They detained the crew and blew up the vessel.
In other cases, the vessels are fined, and hopefully that fine is high enough to deter them from breaking the law again.
Sea Shepherd has assisted in arresting 96 ships since 2016. These are often part of massive illicit fishing operations, sailing far from home. One study found that 10 companies owned about a quarter of the IUU fishing boats reported globally, and 8 of the companies were from China. The other 2 were from Spain and Colombia. All these illegal catches are making our global overfishing problem worse. Today, nearly 40% of the world's fish stocks are unsustainably fished. But it's not just the health of oceans that's at stake.
There's a real human rights element to this as well. I've seen terrible living conditions on board some of these fishing vessels.
Peter found these beds on boats arrested off the coast of West Africa.
If the human rights of those workers were respected, then it wouldn't be profitable for some of these operators to be in business at all. And that's why we're seeing an increase in human trafficking and forced labor by fishing operators.
In December 2021, his crew came across a Chinese squid boat trawling off the Galapagos Islands.
You're stuck there?
He asked if COVID had made it to the United States yet. This was a year and a half after the pandemic started. That's how long this guy had been at sea without any access to any news source.
One investigation found fishermen often endured inhumane living conditions, up to 20-hour workdays, withholding of passports and salaries, and physical and mental abuse. One of the main challenges is the lack of government oversight across seafood supply chains. The U.S. imports 80% of the seafood it consumes, but inspects just 1 to 2% of it at ports of entry.
We need concrete action by our legislature and our federal agencies to ensure that all seafood that is ending up on our plates is safe, legally caught, responsibly sourced, and honestly labeled.
But for now, it often comes down to the consumer.
Blue crabs are hands down the meanest thing in the ocean. Those things are full of spite and aggression. They would jump at you trying to get you with their pinchers.